Yowzers. Hello and welcome to today's SitRep. If you're just watching me stare blankly at the screen, I was just waiting to make sure that YouTube was working today because it hasn't worked the last couple of times that I've attempted this, but it looks like it's on now. So that's cool. I was starting to get suspicious that maybe YouTube doesn't like me. So I just crawled into a corner and cried for a bit. YouTube doesn't like me. No, I like YouTube, so please, let's just get along. I know I say some things that are probably outside of the narrative, but let's just let bygones be bygones, all right? Anyway, let's get on with today. This is the SitRep, the situation report, where I go through news stories that I found in the past couple of days, and we kind of pull it apart and go, hey, what does this mean for the long-term survival of myself? Or we look at it from the perspective of prepping. So how do we keep ourselves better prepared in a world that is increasingly uncertain? Thank you very much for joining me on the Instagrams, on the YouTubes, or whether you are listening to this later on, listening to these smooth dulcetones later on the audio version, wherever you get your podcast. Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those kind of good places. Good on them. Just want to say thank you very much to all of you for joining me, all the people who have been hitting the like, hitting the heart, hitting the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. I appear to be growing, not like rapidly fast, but a couple of people a day usually jump on the channel and go, this guy's worth a subscribe, sort of thing. And I think that helps out with algorithm stuffs and things. I'm not very, tech-minded. Coffee. What would life be without coffee? That's the question. That's what worries me most. I've talked about this before. The apocalypse happens, zombies, yep, whatever. World War III, okay, Par for the course for me. No coffee. I ain't going down like that, son. All right, let's jump into it today. I've got a bunch of stuff because I haven't done one in quite a few days. Apologies, but sometimes human interaction is more important than actually interacting on the internet. I'm sorry to say that. I had a very good close friend from my military days who lives in Norway now, and he's visiting the country, and he drove out to where I am, so spent some time with him. Alpha says, hitting the like button helps channel circulation. I was like number one, by the way. What about you? Yeah. All right, let's jump into it today. It's a shotgun blast of stories that are all over the shop. First one I'm going to talk about is AI. This one was sent to me by my main source, my main sender of information to me on through Instagram. That's the channel that and email, but usually sends me stuff through Instagram, which is really cool, and I always appreciate it. So thank you as always. This one was about artificial intelligence taking its first life, allegedly. First human victim for AI. People are like, Skynet's happening. Just what's next? Nude muscular robots getting sent back in time to 1984 to take your jacket, your boots, and your motorcycle. No. Some dude just committed suicide. I mean, I shouldn't just go just committed suicide. It's pretty bad. This guy was a father of two, worked as a health researcher, led an apparently a fairly comfortable life, and then started chatting with AI instead of chatting with his family or whatever, or as an add to chatting to his family. I don't know what his situation was here, but was definitely apparently talking to AI, and then took his own life. And so people are pointing this and going like, it's happening. And there's a lot of bad press about AI, and I'm like neither here nor there. In fact, I'm probably more there than I am here, in that I'm probably a little bit more reluctant. I have tinkered with it a little bit and tried these things out just to wrap my head around what everyone's talking about. I can see the potential. I can see the dangers in it. And I definitely, being the Luddite that I am, probably lean more into the danger side of it. But I'm not saying damn AI. It's it's the end of the world. Maybe it is. Um, the interesting part about this story is this, and I think this is the underreported part, because every headline I saw on this was AI claims first life, AI linked to human death, AI recommends that someone commits suicide or something to that effect. Here's the key point for me. So this guy was a health researcher, got his mind in what's going on in the world, became obsessed with climate change. And when I read that, I'm like, this doesn't actually have a lot to do with AI. I don't think this has a lot to do with the current narrative that we've got. And I'm talking about from the perspective of myself here, that at one point in time, I was getting really down and doom and gloomy and quite depressed about the state of affairs with climate change. And then I started really researching it hard. Like, I'm like, oh, we've got to tackle this. I need to arm myself with information. And once you pierce through this first layer of information, which is like, here's the climate science, do not question science. The science, capital T, capital S, TM, do not question that. Once you pierce through that, then you start to see some things that maybe don't quite run with the narrative that's happening there. And you start to go, oh, actually, this isn't all it's cracked up to be. And especially when you start to look at alternate potential reasons why we might be seeing the effects that we're seeing, as opposed to anthropomorphic climate change, i.e. climate change caused by you and me and cows farting. So you driving your car, cows farting, food, anything except for bugs, and living in a 15-minute city, that causes climate change. You're bad. Get that guilt. I know you've got the white guilt on you, but here's some more guilt. Here's just human guilt now on you. It's on everyone, right? That's not just covered in one skin color anymore. We've got guilt for everyone. Hand it out. Eat the guilt, and then do what we tell you to do. That's probably more the narrative that I'm looking at now with this. Anyway, it can capture people, and I think it's like this climate cult, as I would describe it now, really digs deep and infects people with minds, and they do some loony stuff. And this is the kind of loony stuff. It is essentially nihilistic. I see when somebody starts spouting like, we have to save the dolphins and the whales, I'm going, this person is a nihilist. Nihilism is bad. Okay, I want to front load that. That's my opinion. I believe nihilism is horrific, bad. It is anti-life. Essentially, it is everything that is joyous and is great and is expanding and is life affirming. It is the opposite of. That's essentially what climate change alarmism, climate change obsession leads into. That's my opinion. Put that on a t-shirt. Up Coronavirus says, how can we crack the fear of going against the herd with the masses? Will we need the numbers? France is a good example. It's hard. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, I made some choices recently in the last couple of years that put me against the herd and against people that I know and people that I loved and people within my circle. Those who I felt truly loved me and truly were in my circle didn't bat an eyelid. They're like, okay, cool. You made that choice. I made this choice. We made our choices, whatever. But I do want to acknowledge that it was a difficult time. It was hard. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's hard work, all right? It's not easy to look at the bad things in the world all the time and make assessments on that. It's not easy to do the work to look after yourself so that you are solid in yourself, and that whatever happens on the outside world are like buffering winds, but you can still forge forward on your path. These things are not easy to do. It's not easy to stand in the face of almost insurmountable odds when we're looking at what the rest of the public want to do or what they think we should do. But I hold a core ideal tight. I hold that core ideal and I move forward based on that core ideal. So for many people, I see like there's a big intersection that's going on now, and it's kind of like this rise of Christianity, and they go right wing, and they go Republican in the US, and they go, chuck in some conspiracy theorists and some loonies, and like all these sort of things are going. But for me, the key point with the religious part of that, at least, is that I'm not personally like into that religion so much, but I respect anyone that is, because they are holding a faith in a power that is bigger than themselves. I think it's difficult to do if you don't have formalized religion, to actually do that, but it can be done. I hold a faith in something that is bigger than myself, and that's in multiple layers as well. There's kind of the spiritual sense of that, but it's also, I believe in an ideal. I believe in an ideal of libertarianism. I believe in an ideal of the dignity of a human being to make their own decisions, that we are adults, not children, and that we should be allowed to do as we wish, and we should just do it, regardless of consequences. It may lead to a hard life, yes. It could even lead to a place like imprisonment or something like that, or in some cases, being cast out or even killed. I guess that's the risk that we take, but nothing that I think is worth having is easy to come by. So that got really philosophical very quickly, didn't it? Let's get back onto it. A couple of comments coming in here. Peter Rouse says Civil War 2.0. My first question is, what pharmaceuticals was he on? I can't remember. I'm very sleep deprived, by the way, today. So I can't remember what I was talking about in reference to that. I usually just use the word lunatic, or maybe I'm actually missing some comments here, because quite often YouTube just doesn't chuck comments up there for me. Roscoe, dude, what's going on, bro? I miss you. Come back to me, Roscoe. No, I hope you're having fun, man. All right, what else is happening in the world? Let's get some more crazy stuff. Car companies to ration petrol and diesel car sales in run up to 2030. So that's what we're facing at the moment. It's not just to do this thing. Here's one thing that I always look at with all this sort of stuff. I go, right, if something is right and correct and good to do, that should be self-evident, i.e., if it made sense and it worked, then why wouldn't everyone go and get a medical procedure in order to stave off some disease? Who knows what that disease could be? I'm trying not to get myself banned. It should be self-evident. If it's not self-evident, people won't do it. And if people don't do it and they start coercing and forcing people to do it, that's self-evident that it does not work, that something is wrong here, as far as I'm concerned. And this is the exact same sort of thing. If they're going like, well, we're actually going to force you to stop selling petrol and diesel cars, we're going to do that. That's evidence to me that something is very wrong. Why wouldn't people just wholesale take up EVs? It's because EVs aren't what they're cracked up to be. The whole entire system that you're thinking, this utopian idea that we can all just drive friggin' EVs around and everything will be peachy keen. But the weather's great now. Saved ourselves a couple of degrees. Not going to work. I'm sorry. Not realistic, and especially in places like Australia, I don't know how you're going to get away with this. Certainly in the cities, yeah, people, and we're seeing this in the cities now. I drive into the major city close to me, and Teslas everywhere. Teslas, or what's the other one? Nissan Leaf or something. Bunch of these sort of cars around. In the town where I live, zero. The only ones I see in the town that I live are the ones that are driving through town from the major city to the coast. Nobody I know owns one here because it is not practical. It would not work. It would be an embuggerance to their life. Is embuggerance an actual word, or is that just an Aussie thing that I've made up? What someone made up and I use? Peter Rouse says the guy that killed himself, right? Yep. YouTube playing games again, as it always does. It's a little tit for tat thing we have. Well played, YouTube. Also, if everyone went over to EVs, then the entire power grid would collapse in every country. And I couldn't agree more with that we don't have the energy to generate. And we see the energy, the capacity to generate energy actually decreasing as we're trying to shift into other forms of electricity generation. So, i.e., solar, wind, hydro is actually like maybe a bit more stable-ish, depending on where you are in the world, I guess. And I'll actually eat my words on that one and rewind a bit because I'm thinking about what's happening in the US at the moment, especially in the West. But places like New Zealand, with hydros, you've got more stability there and you've got more generation capacity. But if you're thinking that you can just unplug the coal, you can just get rid of the other sources of electricity and then go all solar and everything's great, that's not going to work. For starters, then how do you create those systems? How do the panels get made? How do the batteries get made for an EV? Like all this sort of stuff, it all adds up. And one thing that I think is really fascinating about the West is we're super, super good at outsourcing cost. So on like an intimate and actual physical cost money sense, but also on the macro sense. We don't want to do the labor, we'll outsource that. We don't want to think about what the cost is to the earth, so we'll get some other country to destroy their wildlife, to destroy their natural areas, digging shit, and destroy their people, digging poisonous chemicals out of the earth by hand so that it can get shipped to China, packaged into a battery, shipped to Sydney or Canberra, and then a 55-year-old public servant can feel absolutely no guilt by handing over money, by handing over cash money and saying, that's my guilt debt paid. I'm done. I'm out. Sorry, that was the bank calling me. They just want more money. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to talk about it. Not right now. I get it. Interest rates are going up. All right. Peter Russ says nuclear. There are already power shortages in NZ. Man, yeah. It's shocking. And I've talked about this a lot. I think nuclear, it has pros and cons, but if we want to continue the life that we're leading, if we want to continue the trajectory that we're on, which is pulling people out of poverty, increasing lifespans, increasing quality of life, then we're going to, and we don't want to do that with fossil fuels, coal and petrol and things like that. There's nothing else out there at the moment that's going to do it apart from nuclear. So good luck. All right, get on with it. What are we talking about here? No, that's Eurozone stuff. I don't want to talk about that yet. I'm sure there's another Aussie one here. Let's talk about diseases, though. Let's talk about the Marburg Virus. If you don't know what Marburg Virus is, I think you will pretty soon. I have a feeling this might be, it's on the cusp of becoming public knowledge. I actually first heard about Marburg Virus from one of what I think are fantastic novels by an author called Jack Carr, an ex-Navy SEAL, who now writes thrillers. You may have seen the TV show The Terminal List. Well, that was his first book. Now he's got a series of them out. And it was either the latest one or the one before that was all about, like, this dude does excellent research as far as I'm concerned. And he weaves that research into his novels. It's all about Marburg, a particular variant of Marburg called Variant U, which is apparently out there. It's an actual thing, and is pretty horrific. So, yeah. But what's this got to do with the price of fish? What's going on in the world at the moment? Well, the CDC, the font of disease knowledge, as far as we're concerned, is putting out a warning that Marburg virus is on the rise. We've had an African outbreak. There's been African outbreaks of Marburg. That's how we know about it before. Those outbreaks have actually been grabbed by other countries and tested in biolabs. Countries, biolabs, and bioweapons. Oh, no, that's crazy tinfoil hat shit. No, that happens. We know that happens. Because they're doing it for good reasons, right? They're trying to save us. They would never weaponize these things in order to potentially use them against another country. But Marburg is definitely one that worries a lot of people, including the CDC, and they're worried about it because it has now popped up in multiple locations. So they're looking at, where are we? Guinea and Tanzania. Now, my memory of the map of Africa has Guinea in the west and Tanzania in the east. So that's spanning the continent now, which is not a good thing. It's not within the borders of one country, or maybe within the borders of two countries or three countries neighboring each other. This is spread across the continent. The horrific thing about this has a huge kill rate, by the way, this disease, and how people die from it is horrific. Like, if I could think about ways that if I could choose how I was going to die, this would probably be the bottom of the list. This is like bleeding eyeballs, bleeding every orifice, melting cells from the inside out. Pretty shitty way to go. Now, it has a very high kill rate. I want to say it's according to their models that they do, a 50% kill rate. But these models are not perfect. And there are always variants that change that. So some variants do more, some variants do less. One of the problems with these diseases is incubation time. And Marburg, depending on what variant you're looking at, has a long incubation time. That's bad, because you catch it, somebody could catch it, they could do things, and we're talking like a 3-week incubation time. They're doing things for 3 weeks, and they are infecting other people all that time. And then bang, this person starts showing symptoms. They go, oh shit, where have I been? Imagine going 3 weeks back, going through, contacting everyone that you've walked past, coughed on, taken a shit with. I don't know. Like, this thing isn't passed, or allegedly isn't passed through aerosolization. It has to be body fluid contact, which is one of the mitigating factors for it, why it hasn't just spread and killed everyone. But, thinking about that, like, man, how many people have I come in contact with? I've got to contact all those people. They're going to have to get tested. And, there's not like, oh, we can just, fixed. There's nothing like that yet. Sure, I'll make one. But yeah, that's concerning me today. Why do I want to bring this out? Because just be warned, there's these other things out there. And yes, the disease, that's one thing. We should all be worried about the next great pandemic, or any sort of disease that could spread rapidly throughout your area or the world. That's something that I think is worthwhile planning for and thinking about. But what I'm much more concerned about, as always, is the human fallout. And I always say this, there's something that happens, and then there's the human reaction to something that happens. And it's almost always orders of magnitude worse. And we know that it's going to be worse, because we just lived through this for something that was the equivalent of the sniffles. That, yes, it killed people. All right, I want to say that it killed people, and it definitely had a higher rate of killing, up above 65. So now imagine something that affects everyone equally. Well, not equally, but theoretically equally across the age groups, regardless of who they are. And we don't have anything to stop it. Now, think about what government reactions would be. Like, if you think lockdowns were bad before, imagine what they're going to do now. If this sort of thing, if all we need is one case outside of Africa, again, Africa, blind spot to the West. The West is like purposely not looking at Africa, does not want to see Africa. But this is something we need to be looking at. This could happen all throughout Africa, and I don't think we'd see any reaction. One case in maybe not Middle East, but I want to say Asia, definitely Europe or the Americas, and that's it. Welcome back to perpetual lockdown. So just be warned about that. Remember that lockdowns were a thing. Just because we didn't like them and we want to ignore them doesn't mean they're not going to happen again. Prepare yourself for that. You should have X amount of food in your house. You should have the ability to maybe generate more food. And I think, moving forward, I often say, just aim for 3 days of food in your house. But like, I want to be realistic with everyone right now that the trends that I'm seeing where I think we're going, and especially the way our food system is being deteriorated at the moment. Like if you don't have close to 3 weeks at the very minimum of food in your house so that you can shut your front door and live comfortably for 3 weeks, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and it really behooves you right now to start building up that. So prep a goal, prep a 101, university 101. Your goal for the next month is to aim at having at least 3 weeks worth of stuff to keep you alive in your own home. Norman Lacey says, sounds like an Aussie word to me, but I like it. That's embuggerance. I'm sure someone can look that up on the interweb somewhere and tell me what it is. All right, let's just continue the shotgun blast approach to looking at these stories. UK energy crisis is getting worse. UK inflation will get worse. There's a number of reasons inflation is going to get worse everywhere, but I just want to focus on the UK one. This one was sent to me again from my main source, so thank you for that. The story is closing early, cooking less. The energy crisis is pushing businesses ... to the brink. Anthony Pender has already taken steps to cut costs. The founder of Yummy Pubs has been closing his kitchens earlier, frying less food, and shutting earlier on Sundays to save on energy costs. Blah, 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 blah. The result for Pender is that his energy bill will go up by £3,400 sterling a month, which I want to say is probably around 7,000 Australian dollaroos, which is probably around 5,000 American dollars, although I'm watching overnight that line go down for the American dollar. So yeah, that's a lot of money for it to go up. Obviously, here's some numbers, just if we can extrapolate this for some other businesses. One business said, which is a manufacturing business, said their bills will increase from £120,000 per month to, and that's for last month, they paid, so they're already inflated. They're already at £120,000 per month in energy costs. They're saying that for the rest of the year, it looks like they're going to be paying £320,000 every month. Businesses cannot sustain that. So short-term effect is that flows straight out onto consumer as much as possible for them to keep the doors open. They just have to say, like, they have to make that decision. And most businesses won't just go, all right, we'll just shut up shop. Most businesses will go, well, let's try and increase our prices and see if we can keep rolling. So that's going to flow out into the market onto the end users, i.e. you and me, which obviously increases inflation as we're seeing it, which is already through the roof. And then the next thing is, which is the worst of the two possibilities, I guess, is that they shut down. And I've said this a lot, that businesses shutting down, entire almost industries shutting down in some parts of the world. These are things that don't just come back. These take time to regenerate. This is an issue, and this is not an issue that we're going to look at and go, oh shit, that was bad in November this year. This is something that we're going to be looking at in 2028 to 2035 and going like, oh man, we really screwed the pooch on that one. Like, we're still hurting. That's what I think. I think this is going to be 10, 15 years of harder times. That's kind of what I'm preparing myself for right now. Not the end of the world. It's just the slow and steady decline of the abundance, the era of abundance that we've been living in. The end of Pax Americana, if you will, or the decline of the West. Use whatever term you want, but that's what we're looking at. Peter Rouse, correctly says here, Virgin Orbit just went bankrupt. They failed to secure funding for their next sort of step up, and so they have filed for bankruptcy. So, what's that dude's name? I was about to say Russell Brand. It's not Russell Brand. It's that crazy. He's not crazy, actually. Seems relatively sane. I don't know who he is. It'll come to me. Somebody can answer that question. I don't need to answer that. Let's jump back over to Australia now. This is coming from our head of Home Affairs, which I guess the equivalent of if you're in the US, our Home Affairs is kind of like Homeland Security, I guess. That's the closest equivalent that I would think is to the US. Home Affairs, and I didn't actually know this. The Minister for Home Affairs is the Minister for Home Affairs and Cybersecurity. That it's all kind of wrapped in one, which kind of makes sense. I think it may be. It certainly is a step up in the importance in cybersecurity in Australia, where we're saying, hey, a minister needs this portfolio. I would say it's not far enough. I think I actually would push for, personally, a minister of cybersecurity. I think it's that sort of important. Richard Branson, thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. But yeah, this Claire O'Neill has come out and said Australia must prepare for a dystopian future, quote, dystopian future. When your leaders are coming out and saying dystopian future, that's what we need to prepare for. Ugh, that's, aren't you guys supposed to be painting a great picture for us to move into? In which increasingly digitally connected cities may be held hostage through interference in everything from traffic lights to surgery schedules, a senior minister has warned. So again, this is another. I don't look at this and go like, doom and gloom. I look at this and I go, well, this is yet another data point on the decline of our society, where we, I don't think it's any surprise anymore. People shouldn't be like, oh my god, wringing your hands. You'd be like, okay, yeah, I see where we're heading. Like things are getting, less sure. Would be one nice way of putting it. But I see this as encouragement. This is encouragement for you to take responsibility of your own well-being as much as you can. We cannot rely on the systems that are there, because the systems are becoming increasingly complex, increasingly interconnected, and thus increasingly vulnerable. That builds in vulnerability into the system. I don't want my life in the hands of that system, because when it goes down, it is going to go down in a big way. And it's not just me. It is millions in Australia, millions of people who are also in that position. So where do I rank in those millions of people? Probably not very high as far as the government's concerned. So I would rather just be like, oh, that system failed. Oh, that sucks. Well, I have a backup here, or I already take care of my own blah, blah, blah. So good luck with that. In a rough way, at least. That doesn't work for everything, but this is something that we need to think about. So this Minister O'Neill came out and said the Medicare Optus and Latitude data breaches were only the tip of the iceberg, just the tip. I don't know if she said it like that. I would have, though. Gone all Joe Biden on it. These attacks are just the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip. In the cyber threats Australia faced in the years ahead, this is definitely something that's happening. I think we're going to see it more. State actors, criminal elements. Cyber's a big thing, and I've been talking about that for probably about a year now, at least. By the way, happy birthday, YouTube! I was a year old on YouTube, like last week or something. So yay! I know, right? I've been doing this for a year. How crazy is that? It feels like only yesterday we first started this. And Peter L says YouTube playing games again. So interesting stuff about cybersecurity. Remember, protect yourself online. Remember, be very critical about the information that you put online. Do as I say, not as I do. Literally, like I am clearly putting out a lot of information. I try not to put too much personal information out there, but sacrifices at some stage must be made if you want to put other information out there. But I would urge you to protect yourself online as much as you can, and do all the good stuff too, the VPNs and stuff like that. Alpha on YouTube says, yes, I would be grabbing things that might be available in the future, especially concerning or that might not be available in the future, especially concerning electronics. And one of the things to think about electronics, actually, I was looking at US inflation data this morning, and consistently year after year since 2008, electronics have gone down in the US, which tells me that they're probably at a pretty cheap price. Also, they're skewing the inflation data for CPI, because a flat screen TV is included in the CPI data as much as milk and bread is, which, spoiler alert, has gone up year after year, year on year since 2008. So yeah, interesting stuff. And Alpha also says every single person will be affected, I'm thinking. Peter Rouse says hiding in plain sight. Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about this theory before, and I think it's probably your best way. If you hide too much on the internet, you actually stand out. So use the internet. You know, even buy stuff on the internet. Just limit your exposure to it. Limit your exposure of information. Be critical of what you're putting out there. Or is it like we call this red teaming in the biz, in the industry, red teaming, where you think like a bad guy. You go, okay, if I was the bad person and I wanted to affect someone, how would I do it? And you come up with your nefarious little plan. And then once you've done that, you go, okay, well, now I know how to counter that, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to mitigate that risk. Japan breaks with US allies, buys Russian oil at prices above the cap. Naughty. Above the cap at $60 a barrel. So it's above the cap that we put on Russia, but it's below the price of oil right now. Why wouldn't you? I'm bemused by this system where the quote-unquote leaders of capitalist world, the USA, are saying, don't do capitalism. That's what you're doing when you're forcing prices on stuff. You're saying capitalism, no. What we want is actually state-controlled or world state-controlled prices on things. Yeah, I've talked ad nauseum about this. Russia's in a great position. They've got all the resources. They're having a freaking garage sale at the moment, and I don't know why. Like, this has got nothing to do with Russia and Ukraine. I don't care what side of the fence you're on and what you believe about that whole debacle. But here's a simple fact. If there is a country selling resources cheaper than everyone else, I don't know why any other country wouldn't buy it. That's kind of capitalism 101. What, there's a cheaper thing there? I'll buy the cheaper thing. Why wouldn't you? Doesn't even matter that Japan and Russia are on the rocks. Like, they're not friendly to each other. They have conflict that is going on. There's still cheap oil is still cheap oil at the end of the day. Here's another interesting data point on the decline of our society. Largest layoffs in 2023 thus far, and we're only 3 and a bit months into it. Amazon, 27,000 employees. Google, 12,000. Meta, 10,000. Microsoft, 10,000. Goldman Sachs, 3,200. Let's move to some percentages. Coinbase, 25% of their employees. Zoom, 15%. Glassdoor, 15%. Twilio, 15%. Indeed, 15%. Lending Club, 14%. Vimeo, is that still a thing? 11%. DocuSign, 10%. Salesforce, 10%. Gemini, 10%. That's a lot. McDonald's shut down its corporate offices as they prepare to cut hundreds of employees. So what are we looking at? Tech companies have laid off somewhere in the order of 330,000 people in the last year. It's happening. It's happening. But what does the US job data say? Everything's fine. No unemployment here. Of course there's no unemployment. People are hurting for money. They're working whatever the fuck they can right now to get dollars. I don't know why people keep touting that piece of information like it's a good thing. Look, unemployment, it's at its lowest ever. In a perfectly good working economy, yes, that is a good sign. When you've got good working economy, you've got low inflation, you've got interest rates that can be pretty much predicted and staying steady, then low employment, great. in what we have, the shitstorm that we are currently sitting in economically, high unemployment is a fucking warning sign. It should be like blaring sirens to you, like something is not right here. It is because they have AI robot replacements already? Question mark. That's quite possible. A lot, like the tech companies, especially, like I said, 330,000 jobs lost in tech company. This could quite well be AI doing its thing right now. We're going to see a shift. We're going to see a huge shift. We don't know where it's going. AI is going to be different to everything else. But with every single increase, like jump in technology that we've had, disruptive technology is the terminology they quite often use. There is always this huge shift of workforce. The theory being at the time, people freak out because they're like, well, there's going to be all these people out of work. But that doesn't end up occur or hasn't historically occurred. Sometimes it has. There's been a little bit of a lag time from a historical perspective, but we've just seen shifts into other things. So when we went horse and cart and Henry T. Ford came out with the Model T and was like, check this thing out, automated horse on wheels, people freaked out. People were like, no, we can't do this. Like, what about all the farriers? What about all the grooms? What about all the horse stables? What are we going to do with these things? And then we found out that the iron horse that requires the dead dinosaur to be poured into it, that actually requires a lot of maintenance. So there's some more jobs for people. And then the proliferation of other things when we move into the industrial age that also helped instigate, which obviously increased the amount of jobs and the amount of things that people could do. Blah, blah, blah. This is not a history lesson, all right? I'm just kind of saying that there might be potential there. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with AI, but people are freaking out at the moment. Yeah, jobs would be lost. You can write that in stone right now. You can write that in your data ledger. You can put that on blockchain. All right, I'm going to have to wrap this up because my brother just sent me a message saying I've arrived in my hometown. A coronavirus says my mate's doing roofing for Woolies at Liverpool, building 80,000 square meter warehouses. Says there will be about 10 humans to operate machines. 3 80,000 square meter warehouses at a 40-meter height. Peter Rouse says learn to code. Also says they count a person with 3 jobs as 3 separate jobs on the employment number. See? This is like this sort of shit that we need to pay attention to. Okay, I'll just wrap up with a couple of things. OPEC Plus just made a surprise 1 million barrel oil production cut, increase in oil price and or decrease in strategic fuel reserves. That's what that equals. OPEC's come out. They said, we're not going to make this. I'm not going to get too deep into this. I think this is actually what we're looking at is the lump underneath a very cancerous tumor of oil production in the world right now, potentially. I think that this is actually warning to a bigger thing, that maybe peak oil has happened. Haven't heard that term in a little bit. Peak oil is a thing. I mean, peak oil has happened, definitely, but maybe the effects of peak oil are now going to start to be felt. But short-term effect for us, fuel may go up, so watch that as in increase in price at Bowser and or decrease in strategic fuel reserves, especially if you're looking in the US, if you're one of those US people and you're watching your president wholesale save his own job and his own ass by selling off your future, your potential safety and future by getting the oil out of there and just pumping it into the system to like smooth things over and keep the price low. Imagine that. Think about where fuel is right now compared to where it was 3 years ago. And this is keeping it low. It is artificially low right now. So just wrap your head around that. All right, I'll skip over that. I'll talk about that another time. All right, yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. All right, thanks for jumping on today. Really appreciate it. I've got a couple other stories, so I might try and do another SitRep later or tomorrow. If I'm not in the car, I might be driving down to Melbourne tomorrow. Thank you as always. Remember to keep prepping. Like I said, start thinking about that 3 weeks worth of food and stuff in your house. I can hear my dogs barking, which means my brother's just rocked up. So I'm going to go do some contrast therapy with him. Stay safe, y'all. And until next time, Semper Paratus.